Okay, here we go then. 10 shock things that Trump said he's going to do on day one. And we've got my wife here as well today. I'm going to be putting on the sunglasses here as we walk along because it is very bright here today. Okay, so after a landslide victory then, over 300 points here, his return to the White House has got a lot of people shaking in their boots, especially because of the retribution that he said he's going to enact against certain people like the special counsel and like a lot of the people who went after him after the last few years. So he said day one is going to be revenge, but after that he's got a lot of stuff that he's going to be taking care of. So here's the 10 things. We're going to start then with point number one. Let's talk about the revenge aspect, and then we're going to go into the most important stuff, Ukraine, Russia, all the way through. Gosh, there's so much to talk about here, including all the policies that, if you're American, should benefit you. Not everyone, as with all things in politics, some things you will like, some things you won't like. So we'll get into all of it from an economic perspective now then. So point number one, all around revenge, he said that he's going to go after the special counsel and he's going to be fired within 2 seconds. He also said he's going to punish the prosecutors then and the judges who brought those multiple cases against him and what he called all these witch hunts over the last few years. So these are going to be the first things on day one. So let's go on to the point number two then, which is the really big one. This is the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So we know he said that he would end it within 24 hours. Well, I don't know if it's going to end within 24 hours on day one, but we do know the policies now though. So we've got all of the policies, and Vance has put a lot of stuff together as to what they are going to do. So what are those things then? They've actually proposed creating an 800-mile long DMZ, so that's demilitarized zone. Now, this is also part of a plan. It's a 20-year pledge then for Ukraine not to join NATO. They haven't mentioned anything about nuclear weapons or anything like that at this stage, but they said that this is going to be in exchange for continued military aid from NATO. So what has Vance said here then? He said that this is going to be a fortified DMZ, and this is going to be along the current line. He said this will sort of deter further incursions by Russian troops if they put this in place. But who do they want to actually man this DMZ? It's not US troops, it's not even NATO troops. They are talking about British troops, which is very interesting. I wonder if that's got anything to do with the Labour Party and what they did against, well, we remember on Wednesday's video, all the slander, especially from David Lammy, Defence Secretary. Wow, I would not want to be him right now. Can you imagine that first meeting, if he ever gets that first meeting with Trump after the things he called him? I mean, you wouldn't call some of those things to your worst enemy. So that's going to be interesting. So yeah, he said he wants British troops to man this DMZ. He said it won't be US troops who will be manning the DMZ. Another thing that some of you might see as quite radical is that Trump and Vance said that they're going to be withholding or potentially withholding weapons. So US weapons and further support and aid. I don't think they mean humanitarian aid. I think they mean aid for, well, I think they mean costs, funding for weapons here. And the idea behind that, if I'm understanding it correctly, is to bring Ukraine to the negotiating table with Russia, although that will be at a weakness with the negotiations, I believe. They've also talked about the reconstruction of Ukraine and who they've proposed do it, and they're talking about Germany. So there's obviously some sort of discussion or agreement or arrangement that they've had prior to this if they want Germany to do the reconstruction efforts. Why? Because we know that Germany's economy, being the largest in Europe, is also struggling the most in terms of growth and GDP at the moment, and this is a lot under the collapsing energy costs that they have incurred. didn't help for them to close a lot of their energy and nuclear reactors and everything else around this. Now, another interesting point they mentioned is that Trump may try to put some pressure onto Putin in order to also come to the negotiating table. How he might do this, it's still unclear, but a couple of ideas are for the US to ramp up their own energy production. So you've heard Trump said on day one, drill baby drill. That's what he's been saying for a long time. And there's actually sound economic principles behind that. We'll come on to the whole green energy stuff in a moment, but there is some sound economic principles behind the whole drilling aspect, because you have cheaper energy, it will bring costs down of everything, not just manufacturing, but all sorts of things. It'll bring down gas prices at the pump. It will do a lot of stuff. So he wants to ramp up US energy again after he said it was destroyed under the Biden admin and made costs at the pump just astronomical and costs right across the board very high. So if he does this, I think part of the plan will be that this will affect Russia, because the US will be putting out more energy than Russia, is some of the proposals, selling this energy a lot cheaper. And of course, they have a lot of power and sway in this regard with a lot of other countries. And we could come on to Iran and some of the other aspects here as well. Okay, point number 3 then, another hugely controversial point here, and that is border security and the largest deportation of illegal migrants in history. Yes, they said this is going to be the largest deportation in history. Although I do wonder how he's going to do this. I've been sort of pondering upon this, thinking through it, and I don't exactly know how this is going to work, because think about this logically and rationally. You're going to have these teams that are going to be going around finding people and then removing them from the country. Well, considering, what is it, over 95% of people who enter the US illegally don't have any form of identification, they don't have a passport, that's for sure. They throw them away at the border. How on earth are they going to know where to send these people to? I mean, they're just going to collect people and drop them off at the Mexican border, perhaps? I mean, that's probably, if that's how they came in, I guess that's what they would do. They just drop them back outside the border. But then what would happen? You're going to have a mass refugee camp, unlike anything we've ever seen before, at the border there. I mean, this is sort of what I'm thinking through at the minute. How is this going to work? If you have any ideas, drop it in the comments below, because I would be fascinated to see any ideas you think that this could do here. Because he also said he's going to close the border on day 1. So that means no more illegal migration into the country. So that will be done on day 1, securing the border again. But it's not just securing the border, he's also going to end birthright citizenship. So what does that mean? Well, a lot of people might enter the country illegally and they could be pregnant. If they then have a child in the US, then the child is automatically a US citizen. A lot of countries have this. So he said he's going to end that because it acts as an incentive for people to come in illegally, and then there's all sorts of ways for the parents to get passports, and then more family members and all the other sort of stuff comes in. Look at this, beautiful here on the beach here. Kristen's just in front of me there. And the other controversial point then is this travel ban from predominantly what's considered Muslim countries on day 1. So this is also called the Muslim travel ban, as well. I think the left more called it that name in the previous admin. So that's another thing that we're looking at on day 1 here. And I did look up the countries for you. It is Libya, Sudan. These aren't confirmed, by the way, but these are most likely. So we have Libya, Sudan, Yemen, Somalia, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and I think this time possibly even Venezuela as well might get added to this list. Why? Because if you look at a lot of the crime and issues that the US was having, if you remember the videos when apartment blocks were taken over completely taken over by gangs. It was some of these Venezuelan gangs. So I wouldn't be surprised if he adds Venezuela to the list. Another hugely controversial one is the Green New Deal. He's going to be cutting climate regulations again on day one. He called the whole thing a hoax. He's also called it a Green New Deal atrocities. He said his slogan is drill, baby, drill. And he said that he's going to stop this whole thing in order to defeat inflation, terminate the Green New Deal, which he calls the Great Green New Deal Scam. Greatest scam in history, probably, he said. And actually, he's not too far wrong on the scam aspect. And hear me out on this. If you look at a lot of the billionaires who are in control of that whole finance, and you've got G-Fans and all the other organizations who have been massively donating to the Harris campaign, just on a huge level, because they wanted to keep Trump out. Well, why? You've got to look at that logically. Even some of these people that were Republican, or that's who they've donated to in the past, quite a long way back, but still they were. Why would they be donating millions, tens of millions of dollars to the Harris campaign to keep Trump out? It's because if you look at it rationally, they're making billions, not millions, they're making billions, some even hundreds of billions through these funds in order to push all this green energy. You see, it doesn't make any difference to them if the economy is doing bad because energy is expensive, because they're making a fortune out of all of this. And just think of all these new tariffs and taxes and everything else on ordinary people. Now, I know that for me, I just took a flight here and I said, whoa, what's all these extra costs to my wife on this flight? She said, oh, it's these new green flying taxes, which is a massive scam if you think about it. Absolute crazy. So there's just a lot of people that didn't want Trump to come in because he's going to end all of this, well, the gravy train, as it were. Point number 5 then, pardons. He's going to be doing a lot of pardons. The biggest one is going to be the January 6th event, as I like to call it. I don't believe it was an insurrection or the biggest terrorist thing in, I couldn't believe some of these said it was the biggest terrorist event in, modern history and things like that. They're obviously forgetting some of the actual terrorist events that have occurred. But anyway, Trump calls a lot of these J6 hostages. He said that they were wrongfully convicted. None of them should be in prison. He said there's only a handful that he won't release from prison because he thinks that they should be there. But everyone else, he said, is just a massive witch hunt and hoax. And it was done as a way to show him as, some sort of a dictator or whatever. So he's going to be releasing a lot of these people. Now, I did not know this. I looked up the amount of people who were in prison at the moment because of January 6th. It is unbelievable. 1,500 people have been charged criminally in federal court as of October, so just last month here. As of October, can you believe that? 1,500 people. There weren't that many people who even went into the building. So these are people that were just in the crowds and all sorts. It is wild. Okay, on to number 6 then. I hope you are subscribed to the channel here and you've clicked the like button and all that sort of stuff. Right, number 6 then, educational funding. Trump said he will cut federal funding for schools that promote critical race theory and transgender insanity. He plans to promote patriotic education instead as an alternative, and he plans to ban sex and gender transition programs in school. Thank God, finally, someone is going to do something about all of this insanity. Another great one that he's proposed here, number 7, is development projects. He's going to do huge investment into infrastructure and healthcare, building bridges and new roads. He's going to be doing this technology fund. All of these things are excellent ideas. And the reason politicians don't normally do it is because they don't see the benefit on their term. And I think this is a great policy because the last few times I've been to the US, I don't tend to go that often these days, but if things were a lot better, I would go more often. But I remember the last time I flew into Los Angeles, I think it's LAX, I just couldn't believe that airport. It was just, sorry, not to insult anyone, but it was comparable to some of the airports that I've flown into in underdeveloped countries, shall we say. I just couldn't believe that airport. Okay, number 8 then is tariffs. So all of these tariffs on trade. I'm going to say that I'm not 100% convinced on this one. I think that it will initially cause issues. Initially, you're going to see price. This is going to be inflationary in nature. So I'm not convinced it's an excellent policy initially. But what I think, I haven't read the doctrine around it, but what I think their ideas here are that by doing this, it will encourage people to buy more American products because they will be cheaper than imported products. And by doing that, it's a positive cycle because it will start up more business, more entrepreneurship. You'll see a lot more people getting into business. So I think that's probably the idea behind it, but it will be inflationary, so it will push up prices initially, and then later on, as the free market economy kicks in, it will bring prices down. So why would he possibly do that? Well, I think it's because of the energy policies. By making energy cheaper, actually it will be about net level, I would expect. But I haven't done the numbers on it, but I would expect it would be sort of level with what we have at the moment. So inflation around 2%, something like that. But we are in a deflationary zone at the moment, against also, on the flip side, very high levels of inflation with other policies. So we're going to see how this one plays out. I don't have a forecast for it. Those are my concerns or comments on it right now. Point number 9 then, we're getting there. This is your tax reforms. So he's proposing extending the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, reducing corporate tax down to 15%, eliminating income tax on social security benefits as well. So these, again, they're very positive economically. Point number 10 is the Affordable Care Act. This is all medical stuff. He's going to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. He wants to reduce costs, increase competition through the free market. He wants to give more people access to free healthcare, especially veterans. And this is an interesting one, IVF treatments, yes, for women. So he wants to support giving women, I'm almost as bad as some of the, don't say man or woman people then. No, women. He wants to give women free IVF treatment because he talked about the collapsing population. So he wants to, which was interesting. I'm surprised he talked about that because it's sort of a taboo topic for some reason. Why, I have no idea, but it's a kind of taboo topic to even talk about that. But he talked about that and he said he wants to give women free IVF treatment because we need more. He said, we need more babies. We need more babies. So there's your 10 points, but we've got a couple more stories if you want to stick around a bit more. If not, thanks for subscribing and clicking the like button. So Putin has just come out and laid absolute praise onto Trump. Yes, Putin has called him courageous and a great leader. He said he's very much looking forward to coming to the negotiating table with Trump and Zelensky to get a resolution to the conflict in the region. He also said he wants to restore US-Russia relations, which he said would not have been possible under a Harris administration. And I would agree, it just wouldn't have been possible. Europe and the US and Canada, well, pretty much most of these sort of countries were pushing for more war. And in fact, let me add a point on this here, because you've seen my forecasts. I've been talking about them for a long time as to 2027. Massive, massive wars globally. I want to put a pause on these forecasts now that we have Trump in power, because I need to really assess all of those forecasts now and see how they're going to be different under his administration. Because if we see a resolution which probably will be a demilitarized zone, a DMZ, or DMZ before I upset my UK subscribers here. If we do see this zone then coming into place, that could put a halt to conflict, because without weapons funding, there will be no more war. Ukraine will have run out of weapons, men, and funding very quickly. I'm not saying that in a positive way. I'm just saying it's a positive thing that a war is ended and people are not going to be dying on a mass scale at this point. That is what I think is a positive thing if that's what comes out of this. Less people dying, positive. More people dying, not positive. It's pretty straightforward to me. But on the flip side of this, I've got to mention one thing that I think could be worse. The conflict could get worse under a Trump admin, and that's the Middle East, war in the Middle East. Why do I think that? Well, because Trump and Netanyahu are so tight. In fact, you think about who the very first leader to not only congratulate Trump, but to get on a phone call with Trump. Who was it? Netanyahu. So I think we're going to see more conflict in the Middle East. Trump's probably going to do very harsh sanctions on Iran and other countries as well. This is only going to make things more escalated. So we could see escalation with Iran, but de-escalation with Russia. And then with the China-Taiwan aspect, which is part of that coalition, I really don't know at this stage. I thought maybe, again, 2027, we could see that sort of invasion there. But now I don't know. I think Xi Jinping will be taking pause and meeting with his strategists to think a lot more deeply about whether that will be the right decision. Now, I can't ever finish a walk and talk without talking about one crazy or strange story, can I? So here's the strangest thing I found this week. Are you ready? Hold on, let me get the waves in the background as we end here. The Guardian newspaper, the editors are now offering 24/7 therapy and virtual well-being tools for staff coping with Trump trauma. Yes, apparently many of their staff have been traumatized by the fact that Donald Trump won. They can't get over this. So there's going to be therapists and all sorts of things coming in. But it's not just the Guardian. Harvard University professors have cancelled classes. Yes, but it's not just Harvard. Right across blue states, universities, schools, colleges have cancelled classes. They are offering therapy. Therapists said they are fully booked up. And they said the school said this is to allow students to deal with, and I quote, the emotional scars, it's a bit harsh language there, and trauma inflicted by what has been a new dawn of white supremacy, they are calling it. Wow, who'd have known that by Trump winning, all of a sudden, the country has now flipped to this extreme nature, according to these very tiny percentage of people who are professors. So, I mean, they must know. They must be the experts. Okay, let me grab Kristen and she can say goodbye to you here.
Thanks for watching Neil's Walk and Talk today. Make sure you click like and subscribe.
See, she knows exactly what to say here. There you go. Thanks. God bless, guys. We're going to go for a nice little walk now, get this video uploaded, and we'll see you next time. God bless.
Bye.